Hello everyone, and welcome to the 36th plagiarized episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring Dark Helmet from Spaceballs. An immature, unhinged Dark Knight with a massive, oversized helmet and short stature, he is the perfect parody of Darth Vader. Today, we will assess this iconic comedic villain and see what makes Lord Helmet on the downside. While we don't have a lot of information on Dark Helmet's backstory in the original film itself, thanks to Spaceballs the animated series, his backstory was thoroughly explored. Dark Helmet was born as Panikin Crybaby. Unflattering a name as it is, he was born a slave to President Scrooge's father in his department store, but was freed by Yogurt, who sensed his potential in the Schwartz, and after securing his freedom, trained him in the ways of the Schwartz. However, Panikin started to get the hots for a princess named Harley Van Patten, and used the Schwartz to seduce her, although she couldn't marry him because of training to become a Schwartz master. Long story short, a bunch of altercations occurred, resulting in Panikin getting a severe bump on his head, causing Harley to become disgusted with his appearance and leaving, and where President Scrooge constructed a helmet for him that would cover his head bump, thus turning Panikin into Dark Helmet. With that being said, it's clear throughout Dark Helmet's appearances, whether it be in the movie itself or the animated series, that he was the subject of neglect. His mother was not the most attentive to him, which made him extremely bratty and self-entitled, and this translates to his appearance in the film. In his first appearance, he was feared not for his dominating presence, which he virtually did not have, but because he would punish subordinates for the most petty reasons. He zapped a Spaceball's dick simply because he called President Scrooge before him, and he saw this as going over his helmet. It's also shown that he has next to no respect for anyone, as he sees Colonel Sanders as a chicken, and was prone to making faces in front of President Scrooge with his helmet down. As seen in the animated series, his alliance with President Scrooge was one of convenience, and to further his own goals, rather than out of genuine loyalty. And by this point, Dark Helmet relished in being evil, given he acknowledged as such during his confrontation with Lone Star, remarking that evil will always triumph, because good is dumb. Basically, Dark Helmet is an unhinged brat. He's quick to assert dominance through bizarre means, and punishes his lackeys for petty reasons and in ridiculous ways. Taught with no social skills, it's safe to say that Dark Helmet may exhibit some kind of antisocial disorder. Narcissism is the first one that comes to mind, because he has an overinflated ego, but will always back down when things don't go his way, such as when he realized he couldn't fight the much more powerful Yogurt, because Yogurt had the upside and Helmet had the downside. And he will also result in performing cheap and dirty tricks, such as feigning a fair fight deal with Lone Star, which was really just a trick for taking his Schwartz ring. Dark Helmet was a guy who earned absolutely nothing, yet due to his narcissism, he wasn't above gloating, but of course, he relished in his victories in the most pathetic ways. For example, and to demonstrate his immaturity, he started playing with toys and fantasized about kissing Princess Vespa, investing in his activity a little too much. There's also the fact that after having Lone Star cornered, he started monologuing about his victory, giving Lone Star enough time to use the Schwartz, a mistake that gave him the same kind of punishment he gave his men. In fact, he's prone to saying irrelevant things, such as revealing to Lone Star that he was his father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate, which by definition made them absolutely nothing. I also suspect that there's a ton of insecurity in Dark Helmet, given his short stature and the fact that he had to wear an oversized helmet to hide a bump on his head. The large helmet is likely a coping mechanism to make himself appear large and in charge, although Dark Helmet rarely, if ever, demonstrates that. But that's probably due to him having no clue how to be assertive or threatening, aside from twisting people's dicks with his Schwartz. I mean, that's literally how he bossed people around, by threatening to twist their bits if they failed him or did something he didn't like. His poor judgment too, thinking that light speed was too slow and Spaceball 1 would have to go straight to ludicrous speed. ignoring Colonel Sanders' warning about ludicrous speed and his recommendation to buckle up. Then immediately ordering Colonel Sanders to use the emergency stop, which didn't end well for him. And he's lucky he was wearing a helmet as massive as his. Another thing to note, despite his moderate training with the Schwartz, Dark Helmet had next to no natural talent. Dark Helmet relied on his Schwartz ring way too much, and is never seen utilizing the Schwartz without his ring. So basically, Dark Helmet wasn't even powerful. He just had a really useful gadget to make sure things went his way. But without dominance or wit, given Dark Helmet wasn't exactly the brightest tool in the shed, what would Dark Helmet even be without his Schwartz ring? He owed it to Yogurt in the first place, but as always, held no regard for him, complaining that he hated him, even with strawberries. I imagine Yogurt even saw Helmet with the downside of the Schwartz in him, and so while he gave him the skills of the Schwartz ring, he didn't teach him about using the Schwartz without the ring. It's clear that out of his 2 apprentices, he only taught this to Lone Star, meaning that the Schwartz was strong within him, and he didn't need the ring to harness the power, while Dark Helmet was reliant on it. This might remind you of Darth Nihilus, because Darth Nihilus had the ability to destroy planets with the Force, but that didn't mean he was truly powerful. He was a slave to his hunger, and relied on it simply to exist, and the more planets he sucked up, the hungrier he ultimately got, given he was bound to crave it, and it was a short-term solution to his problems. But to say that Dark Helmet was like Darth Nihilus would be quite wrong, given he was at the end of the day an immature brat with top-level narcissism and 0 social skills, who had ridiculous ways of punishing people, whether it be to twist his subordinates' dicks for stupid reasons, or threatening to give Princess Vespa back her old nose. Perhaps his only redeeming quality, his desire to save planet Spaceball, was ruined by his desire to destroy a planet with a population, instead of finding a habitable planet with no sentient life. It also seems like his plan to destroy planet Druidia was out of sheer spite and envy, given he was unable to marry a princess in his past. However, that is just speculation. Besides, he had no real loyalty to President Scroob, and he speculated behind his back that Scroob would probably destroy the air supply quickly, meaning that his plan to destroy planet Druidia was pretty much just pragmatism for planet Spaceball. And to quote his mentality again, evil will always triumph, because good is dumb. With that being said, it's best to describe Dark Helmet as a poorly nurtured crybaby who grew into an unstable man-child with next to no intelligence, who reacts badly for even the dumbest reasons, with huge insecurities that not even a large piece of head protection could mask. But ultimately, despite his lack of a threatening presence, Dark Helmet still qualifies as evil. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Analyzing Evil. What do you think of Dark Helmet? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm JJ Plagiarisms, and until next time, what are stories but mystery boxes?
Under the mountain, a golden fountain, were you praying that the Loris struck?